In the vast expanse of known space, where countless species have carved out their own territories among the stars, humans have always been considered, well, a bit of an oddity. We're not the strongest, not the fastest, and definitely not the most technologically advanced. But there's one thing that sets us apart: our absolutely baffling ability to make friends with literally anything. I should know. I'm the living proof of that particularly human trait, and let me tell you, it's gotten me into the strangest situation of my life. See, I'm just a regular maintenance engineer on Deep Space Station 7, the kind of person who fixes broken climate controls and makes sure the artificial gravity doesn't suddenly turn everyone's morning coffee into floating hazards. 3 standard months ago, while doing routine repairs on the outer hull, I encountered something that made every safety protocol in the station's database flash red. Something that made hardened military veterans wake up screaming. Something that even the fearless Dracnet warriors, you know, those 8-foot-tall reptilians with natural armor plates, would rather jump into a black hole than face. The station's sensors picked up a shadow hunter. Yeah, that shadow hunter. The apex predator that makes Earth's ancient tigers look like house cats. The species that evolved to hunt in the dark spaces between stars and can tear through reinforced hull plating like it's paper. The creature that's responsible for the disappearance of entire exploration fleets. Everyone else ran. That's the sensible thing to do when you encounter a space-borne predator bigger than most shuttlecraft. But here's the thing. I noticed something in the way it moved. Something wasn't right. And that's when I saw it. A piece of space debris lodged deep in its side, right between those famous phantom steel plates that make them nearly invulnerable. It was hurt. And you know what? When I looked into those bioluminescent eyes, each one bigger than my whole body, I didn't see the mindless killer from all those warning broadcasts. I saw pain. Now, I'm not saying what I did next was smart. In fact, the station's chief of security called it the dumbest thing any human has done since someone decided to teach pandas martial arts. But I did it anyway. I switched off my emergency beacon, powered down my suit's defensive systems, and slowly approached the injured shadow hunter. The next few moments would either make history or turn me into another space mystery for future generations to solve. What happened next changed everything we thought we knew about these creatures. It turns out, thousands of years of running away and shooting on sight might have given us the wrong impression about the galaxy's most feared predator. And now, as I sit here in my quarters, watching the gentle giant floating outside my window like some impossibly large space puppy, I can't help but wonder how many other deadly species out there are just waiting for someone to give them a chance. Of course, explaining to Station Command why I need an extra cargo bay of synthetic protein for my new friend. Well, that's a whole other story. And don't even get me started on the paperwork involved in registering the Shadow Hunter as a station support entity. But the real challenge, that came when we discovered why it was so far from its usual hunting grounds in the first place. Something had driven it here, something that made even this legendary predator flee in terror. And trust me, when something scares a shadow hunter, we should all be worried. Very worried indeed. It took about a week before I could get anyone else on the station to stop panicking every time they saw my new companion through the observation windows. The station's head scientist, Dr. Chen, was actually the first one to come around. I guess scientific curiosity eventually outweighed self-preservation instincts. She now spends hours studying the shadow hunter's behavior, though she still insists on keeping a blast door between them during observations. I named it Nova, by the way. Seemed fitting for something that glows like a newborn star when it's happy. And yes, it does get happy. Especially when I bring out the industrial-sized protein synthesizer that engineering finally approved after 3 formal requests and 1 very awkward station-wide meeting. But here's where things get weird, and trust me, befriending a space monster is actually the normal part of this story. 2 days ago, Nova started displaying behavior I hadn't seen before. The usually calm creature began positioning itself between the station and the direction it had come from, like a guard dog protecting its home. The deep space sensors weren't picking up anything unusual, but Nova's agitation kept growing. Dr. Chen's analysis of Nova's bio readings showed elevated stress levels and something else, a pattern of neural activity that matched what we'd seen in other species experiencing fear-based memories. Whatever had chased Nova across half the galaxy was leaving tracks that only a shadow hunter could detect. The station's long-range communication array picked up scattered distress signals from the outer colonies. Nothing concrete, just fragments of messages about shadows moving against the stars and entire outposts going dark. The weird part: these outposts weren't being destroyed, they were being abandoned. Something was causing mass evacuations, but nobody could say exactly what they were running from. Yesterday, I spent 6 hours in my EVA suit, floating beside Nova's massive head, trying to understand what it was trying to tell me. The neural translator we jury-rigged from old xenobiology equipment kept picking up the same pattern. A sensation of cold, of darkness deeper than space itself, and something that even Nova's incredible senses couldn't fully comprehend. The station's council met this morning. They'd wanted to report everything to Central Command, but I managed to convince them to wait. You see, I've noticed something about Nova's behavior that nobody else has picked up on yet. It's not just warning us or hiding, it's waiting. Every few hours, it makes this long, low-frequency sound that vibrates through the station's hull, like it's calling out to something. Dr. Chen's latest theory is that Nova might not be a lone refugee. There could be others of its kind out there, fleeing from the same threat. The thought of multiple shadow hunters converging on our station would have terrified me a month ago. Now I'm actually hoping she's right. Because if what scared Nova is heading our way, we're going to need all the help we can get. The station's defensive systems are good, but they were designed to protect against pirates and asteroids, not something that can spook the galaxy's apex predator. The really unsettling part: the temperature in the outer sectors has been dropping steadily for the past 12 hours. Environmental control swears there's nothing wrong with the heating systems, but I can see my breath when I walk through Delta Wayne now. And just before my shift ended, I could have sworn I saw something moving in the shadows between the stars, something that made Nova's bioluminescent patterns pulse with a warning I didn't need translated. Whatever's coming, I have a feeling we're about to find out why some species choose to hunt in the dark, and why others choose to run. The station's emergency klaxons blared to life at 300 hours, jerking me awake from an uneasy sleep. The artificial gravity flickered, sending my coffee mug floating past my head as I scrambled to pull on my uniform. Nova's deep rumble vibrated through the hull, no longer a warning, but something closer to a battle cry. Through the viewport, I watched 3 more shadow hunters emerge from the darkness of space, their massive forms illuminated by the pulsing bioluminescent patterns running along their sides. They moved with purpose, taking up defensive positions around the station like ancient warships preparing for battle. Nova's call had been answered. The temperature had plunged to near freezing across all sectors now. Emergency power kicked in as systems started failing one by one. Engineering reported that something was actively draining our energy, not like a mechanical failure, but like something was feeding on it. The darkness between the stars seemed to be getting darker. Dr. Chen's voice crackled over the com, her usual scientific calm cracking with urgency. The sensors were picking up impossible readings, spaces where the basic laws of physics simply stopped working. Holes in reality itself, spreading like cracks in ice, and through those cracks, something was reaching through. The station's outer cameras caught glimpses of it, or them, we couldn't tell. Shapes that hurt your eyes to look at, moving in ways that shouldn't be possible. The shadow hunter's bioluminescence flared in response, creating a protective barrier of light around the station. That's when we finally understood. These creatures hadn't evolved to hunt in darkness, they'd evolved to fight it. The station's council was in chaos. Half wanted to evacuate, half wanted to stay and fight. But the escape pods wouldn't work. The mysterious force had created some kind of spatial distortion around us. We were trapped, along with our 4 improbable guardians. Nova suddenly pressed itself against the main viewport of the command center, its massive eye focusing on me. The neural translators started picking up intense patterns, not of fear this time, but of determination. Through the crude interface, I began to understand fragments of meaning. The shadow hunters weren't just protecting us, they needed us. Something about the station's power core, about light and energy and resonance. The other shadow hunters moved in perfect sync, their bioluminescent patterns synchronizing into a complex, pulsing rhythm. The darkness seemed to recoil from their light, but it wasn't enough. Whatever was trying to break through was too strong for them to hold back alone. That's when Nova's eye fixed on me again, and the translator picked up one clear concept: cooperation. A plan started forming in my mind. Crazy, probably suicidal, but possibly our only chance. If we could modify the station's power core to match the frequency of the Shadow Hunters' bioluminescence, maybe we could amplify their natural defenses. But there was a catch. Someone would have to go outside, into that impossible darkness, to manually adjust the external power relays. The automated systems were dead, and the maintenance bots had stopped responding hours ago. Through the viewport, I could see the boundary where reality met, whatever that thing was, the void between spaces where light itself went to die. I looked at my EVA suit hanging in the locker, then back at Nova's enormous eye. The creature that everyone in known space feared, the legendary predator that had become my friend, was asking for my help. And really, after everything that had happened, there was only one answer I could give. I just hoped I'd live long enough to find out if I was right. The moment I stepped into my EVA suit, every safety protocol I'd ever learned screamed at me to stop. But there wasn't time for fear. The darkness beyond the airlock was spreading, eating away at the fabric of space itself. Nova and the other Shadow Hunters had formed a protective circle of light around the station, but their bioluminescent barrier was starting to flicker. Dr. Chen's voice crackled through my helmet walking me through the power relay modifications we'd sketched out in the 5 minutes of planning we could afford. The plan was simple: synchronize the station's power core with the Shadow Hunter's natural energy frequency. Simple in theory, probably impossible in practice, but it was all we had. What we didn't expect was for the void to fight back intelligently. As I made my way along the hull, magnetic boots fighting to keep contact, I saw it. Streams of absolute darkness moving with purpose, probing the Shadow Hunter's defenses for weak points. This wasn't just some cosmic phenomenon. This was something conscious, something hunting. Then came the second shock. As I reached the first power relay, my helmet sensors picked up an energy signature that matched perfectly with the Shadow Hunter's bioluminescence. Not from them, from deep within the station itself. The reading was coming from the ancient backup generator, a relic from when the station was first built 2 centuries ago. A cursory scan revealed why. The generator's core was made of the same crystalline material as the phantom steel plates covering the Shadow Hunters. All this time, we've been sitting on technology reverse-engineered from their species, probably by the station's original builders who'd encountered them before. Nova's massive form shifted above me, its light intensifying as it fought back another tendril of darkness. The neural translator was picking up fragments of what seemed like memories, not just Nova's, but older ones, passed down through generations of its species. They'd fought this enemy before, centuries ago. The station wasn't built here by accident. It was a fortress, a lighthouse in the dark between stars. But we'd forgotten. Humans had seen the Shadow Hunters as monsters for so long that we'd missed the obvious. They weren't the predators, they were the guardians. And now the ancient enemy they'd once helped seal away was back, stronger than ever. The realization hit just as the void made its most aggressive move yet. A massive tier in space opened directly above the station, so dark it made the surrounding vacuum look bright in comparison. The Shadow Hunter's light barrier began to crack, and through the gaps, I caught glimpses of something vast and ancient stirring in that impossible darkness. Nova's warning came too late. A tendril of pure darkness whipped through the barrier, wrapping around my tether line. The other Shadow Hunters roared, a sound that vibrated through my suit and shook the station's hull. As I was yanked toward the void, I had just enough time to slam my magnetic boots against a hull plate and activate the modified power relay. The crystalline core in the ancient generator hummed to life, resonating with the Shadow Hunter's bioluminescence. For a moment, I thought we'd succeeded. Then the void's pull strengthened, and through my neural link with Nova, I understood the terrible truth. We hadn't just awakened an old defense system. We'd activated something much more powerful, something that could either save us all or tear reality apart completely. And in that moment, Suspended between light and darkness, I realized that befriending a shadow hunter wasn't the craziest thing I'd done this week. It was what I was about to do next. The ancient generator's crystalline core pulsed with growing intensity, its light synchronizing with the shadow hunter's bioluminescent patterns. Through my neural link with Nova, I felt more than saw what was happening. The crystals weren't just amplifying their light. They were amplifying something far more fundamental. They were amplifying the very thing that made shadow hunters the apex predators of known space, their ability to bend reality itself. The void's tendril still had my tether, pulling me toward that impossible darkness. But instead of fighting it, I did something that probably confirmed everyone's suspicions about my sanity. I magnetized my boots to a piece of debris and used the void's own pull as a swing line, launching myself toward the station's main power array. If the backup generator could do this much, what could the station's full power do when properly synchronized? Nova understood my plan instantly. The massive creature broke formation, diving beneath me to provide a living platform. The other shadow hunters adjusted their positions, their light creating a corridor through the darkness. Time seemed to slow as ancient instincts and modern technology aligned for one desperate gambit. The main power array was never meant to be adjusted manually in space. My hands shook as I rerouted power flows and synchronized frequencies, acutely aware of the void's tendrils pressing against the failing light barrier. The cold had become intense enough to penetrate my suit's insulation. Warning lights flashed across my helmet display. Structural integrity of the station was failing, atmosphere venting from multiple breaches. That's when everything went wrong in exactly the right way. A massive tendril of darkness broke through, heading straight for the station's core. At that same moment, my frozen fingers slipped, connecting circuits that were never meant to touch. The station's entire power grid surged into the ancient crystals. The effect was instantaneous and impossible. The shadow hunter's bioluminescence exploded into something beyond light, a cascade of reality-bending energy that rippled outward like a shockwave. The void recoiled, its darkness shredded by waves of pure creation. Through my neural link, I felt Nova's triumph as an ancient memory surfaced. This wasn't the first time their kind had done this. It was how they'd originally sealed the void away, using stations like this one as anchor points. But the victory was short-lived. As the void retreated, torn apart by the combined power of human technology and shadowhunter biology, the station's systems began to overload. We'd won the battle, but the power surge was going to tear the station apart with everyone still inside. That's when Nova did something unprecedented. All four shadowhunters moved in perfect synchronization, their phantom steel plates shifting and interlocking around the station like living armor. Through our link, I understood they weren't just protecting us from the explosion. They were becoming part of the station itself, their crystalline biology integrating with our technology to create something entirely new. The surge peaked, reality buckled, and for one eternal moment, I saw what the shadowhunters truly were, not just predators or guardians, but living ships created eons ago to protect younger species from the things that lurked between stars. We hadn't just found allies, we'd rediscovered humanity's ancient protectors. The light faded, the void vanished, and I found myself standing in a transformed station. The walls now pulsed with living light, phantom steel plates seamlessly merged with human engineering. Through every viewport, I could see stars. Real stars, not the darkness that had tried to devour them. Nova's consciousness brushed against mine, sharing not just relief but anticipation. Because now we knew the truth. There were more stations out there, more dormant crystals waiting to be awakened. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, more of the void's kind were stirring. Humanity had just joined a war that had been raging since the dawn of time. And thanks to one maintenance engineer's ridiculous ability to make friends with anything, we finally had a fighting chance. The real question was, what would the rest of humanity do when they learned their most feared predator was actually their oldest ally? The days following our encounter with the Void were a blur of debriefings, examinations, and endless questions from Central Command, trying to explain how our deep space station had merged with four shadowhunters to become a living fortress was interesting, to say the least. The official reports took weeks to file, mostly because no one could agree on what classification level to give. Station achieved symbiosis with supposedly deadly space predators. The transformation wasn't just physical. Every system on the station now worked in perfect harmony with our Shadowhunter allies. The environmental controls adapted automatically to optimize both human and Shadowhunter comfort. The sensors extended far beyond their original range, enhanced by our Guardians' natural abilities to detect spatial anomalies. Even the artificial gravity seemed smoother somehow. Dr. Chen was in scientific heaven, of course. She'd already published 3 papers on the crystalline technology we discovered, though she had to be creative with her citations, since ancient Space Guardian told us through psychic link isn't considered proper academic sourcing. The neural interface we'd cobbled together had evolved into something much more sophisticated, allowing for clear communication between species. Nova, it turned out, had quite a sense of humor once the language barrier was properly bridged. The station's council had to be completely restructured to include Shadowhunter representatives. Watching a creature the size of a small spaceship carefully manipulating a digital voting panel, specially designed by engineering, during our first joint session was something I'll never forget. We were writing a new chapter in human history, one that began with fixing a wounded predator instead of running away. Word spread quickly through the galaxy. Other stations started reporting Shadowhunter contacts, usually beginning with panic before someone thought to actually try communicating. The Void's brief emergence had awakened something in their species, a need to reconnect with the younger races they'd once protected. More crystals were discovered, more stations transformed, and slowly, the truth about our place in the galaxy began to emerge. The really funny part: the station's maintenance logs revealed that the original builders had known about the Shadowhunters' true nature. They'd built these stations as meeting points, places where our species could work together against common threats. Somewhere along the way, we'd forgotten. Fear had replaced understanding, turning Guardians into monsters in our stories. Nova still spends most of its time near my sector of the station. The neural link works both ways now. Sometimes I catch glimpses of ancient memories of battles fought in the spaces between stars, of a time when humans and Shadowhunters worked side by side as equals. Other times, Nova picks up my memories of Earth's oceans, of forests and mountains, and I feel its curiosity about the worlds we call home. Yesterday, we detected another void signature, far out on the edge of known space. But this time, we're ready. The station, our station, isn't just a defensive position anymore. It's a beacon calling out to both species, reminding us that the greatest threats in the universe can only be faced together. As I sit here in my quarters, watching Nova's bioluminescence create dancing patterns on my walls, I can't help but smile at how it all started. One human too stubborn or too compassionate to run away, and one predator too injured or too curious to attack. Sometimes the biggest changes in the universe start with the smallest acts of kindness. They say space is full of monsters. Maybe that's true, but sometimes what we think is a monster is just a friend we haven't met yet. And sometimes the best way to face the real darkness isn't with weapons or walls, but with the simple human ability to reach out and say hello, even if that hello is to the galaxy's most feared predator.